and welcome to Niziol Bespoke Property Matters. On today's show I have got a massively successful property tycoon. We've got Neville Wright, who has been in the property industry for over 45 years. So a lot of people have been really excited to have you on my show, Neville, and because a lot of people that listen to my podcast want to understand, you know, basically how to get into property. So I'd like you just to sort of explain how you started off in your property journey, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming over, and I see you've got a list of questions, which is great, and I love answering questions. See if I can help anybody. So my journey started in 1966, and that was when I decided, that's when I met my wife. I mean, she wasn't my wife then. I mean, I didn't just say, oh, hello, you're my wife.
Yeah.
No. So,
and that's the lovely Marilyn, isn't it? That we
Marilyn, who you met earlier.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm glad she's gone to the office now and getting on with some work. Yeah. So, 1966, we decided that we, after a few weeks of knowing each other, we would get married, have children, and own our own house. And in those days, you didn't get married and have children and then own. You tried to do it the opposite way around. You needed a house first. So that was great, because nowadays I might have just gone and rented a house, lived together, had children, and then never been able to afford to buy one. But in those days, you wasn't allowed, your parents wouldn't allow you to do it. So we lived separately, obviously with our respective parents, and we saved our money. Now, our first house we bought when we was 18. I think Marilyn was 17, I was 18. And you wasn't allowed to own property in those days until you was 21. And as the solicitor said, responsible. So 40 odd years, 50 years later, Marilyn says I'm still not responsible. So I don't know what happened there. So we wanted a new house and we couldn't afford one. Brand new 3-bedroomed chalet bungalow was £3,000 and we couldn't afford that. So we went to the opposite end of the market and went to a derelict place. So we picked up this derelict place for £650. And I said we did, but I wouldn't have had the nerve to have gone into an estate agent, 18 years old, and make a bid like half the price. But my father-in-law, who I thought was a bit crazy, because he didn't mind, because if the estate agent had said on your bike, mate, it wouldn't have affected him. But it would affect me as an 18-year-old going in. What's this 18-year-old going in making a bid for? Anyway, he did it for me, and luckily the house had been empty for a long time, nobody wanted it, and we bought it.
Wow.
And so that started us on our journey. We wasn't thinking at that time it was going to be an investment. It was a property that we would live in and make our home. But obviously we am I boring you with this?
No,
because,
no.
I don't know what the question was.
It's the derelict building, so you know, like that's quite a massive thing to do when you, like, your first property to
Well, you
own.
didn't know anything. I could take wallpaper off the walls, but I couldn't put it back on. You know,
yeah, so like a derelict building is quite a massive thing to take on when you're 18.
Yeah, and there was no water in it. There was no kitchen, no bathrooms. There was gas lamps in it, so there's no electricity in it, and it was an undertaking. But luckily, I'd got a father who was very practical. He was a carpenter, and he was a very practical person. And although he thought I was going beneath my standard, and he said, "What have you got this for? Because you're going beneath your standard." And I said to him, "Dad, I haven't got a standard. You have a standard," because he was in a nice part of town. He wasn't wealthy, but he was in a nice part of town, and he owned his own place. He'd got it on mortgage, and it was really nice. He'd brought me up in that standard, but I hadn't got one. I'd got to find my own.
Yeah.
And it was worth more to me to buy that derelict house and build on it than rent a property. So that for us was...
So was it more the money, as in you were able to get that property cheaper, or was it more like the entrepreneurial flair where you sort of saw that as a project and thought...
No, it was quite simply, I didn't want to hand over £2 or something like that a week of my hard-earned money to somebody and get nothing for it. I didn't understand at that time that £2 a week was for a house and I could live there. I would rather put that £2 a week into the house and own it myself. So it is this owning things that right from the age of, I would say, 7, when I started to earn money, I wanted to own things. I wanted to buy things for myself and own them. So I suppose that's where it came from. And
was that your parents that sort of taught you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So did they sort of run their own business?
No, they didn't. Unfortunately, my dad should have done, but he didn't. And he was scared of doing it. And he would tell me from the age of 4, I should have. And if I've heard that from him, sadly he's gone now. If I've heard that from him once, I've heard it a million times. I should have gone into business, and of course he was scared. And this is the thing. When you have got a job, you're scared to make that leap. And
so did that make you always want to sort of go, I don't want to do what my father did and have any regrets, and want to make sure that
it took a long time to do that. Because I felt like he did, once you got a job and then get an income and then you get your responsibilities and get married and get a family and have all these responsibilities and only end up with nothing at the end of the week, only your bills paid. What a scary prospect to jump. And but your attitude has to change as well, because my attitude of working with other people, that taught me some very bad attitudes about work and about life in general. But anyway, at 24, that all turned, and I did go self-employed.
Oh wow!
Yeah, forced. I had 17 jobs, and then and they fired me. After, it's quite good. It's quite good, really.
So sort of, you got forced down the route of like self-employed.
Yeah, I want to, but I can't. I want to, but I can't. This is how it was all the time. I hate my job. I hate it. I hate my job. And then somebody fires you, and you say, "Oh, give me it back. Give me it back." And it's like, And anyway, I didn't get it back. I was there was a recession. There's 1 million people unemployed in 1973. 74. So his worst recession, 2008 was a bad recession. 73, 74 was a bad recession because January the 1st, 1974, they cut the electricity off to companies, and you could only get electricity if you was in business 3 days a week.
Wow. And is that when you went self-employed at that point?
It was.
Yeah. So when did you, you bought your first house when you were 18 with Marilyn?
Yes.
And then how did you sort of take that journey into, because obviously you've got a property portfolio worth in excess of,
I don't know, it's about £100 million.
Which is just absolutely incredible.
We stopped investing in Marville properties. So Marville properties started in 1974. And when I say properties, it's property maintenance.
Right.
I started with 37 pence. It was a piece of scrim for a cloth for cleaning windows. So that's where we actually started that business. Now that business, we've still got it, but in 2011 we started more businesses. So because it's not a limited company and we have to pay a huge amount of tax when we sell anything on that, we decided to kind of freeze that business and and there's still about £50 million worth of property in there.
Wow.
There is, and then we built other companies since then.
Right.
We have for the last 8 years. So what we did, we didn't know our standard. We was looking for our standard, as my dad said, and we had got this ambition of having a lovely house. So we renovated the first house, and we got married in 1970. 1971, we sold it for £2,100.
Wow.
And we bought a semi-detached house at 2000. Again, it was unmodernised.
Yeah.
So we'd gone from a terraced house being fully modernised, that we'd spent a few years doing.
Yeah, and made quite a lot of money on it.
So that had cost us £1,000 in total.
Yeah.
We sold it for 2,100.
Wow.
If I'd have kept that house,
yeah,
and rented it out,
yeah,
it would have been paying for itself every 69 days.
Wow.
So that's
how much would that house be worth?
That's about 150,000. So in that time, that's how that house has gone up. But bigger and better houses would have gone up even more.
Yeah.
So we didn't. We needed the money to put into the next house, 2,100, and then in 1972, houses went sky high. They did. So we'd renovated this house. We hadn't spent a lot of money on it, but it had gone from £2,000 to £7,500 in 9 months.
Wow.
Now we saw that as an ideal time to sell that house, because we wanted to live in the country. We found a bungalow at I think it was £10,000, and we got a mortgage on it.
Yeah.
So we hated it. It was isolated. It was in the winter. I was working 12 hours a day for somebody else, and so I didn't see Marilyn, and she had the baby, and it was isolating. You know, she couldn't get out anywhere. So she didn't drive. So we had we had a van. We didn't have a car, and I was using it to go to work. So she got very depressed in that house, and so we decided we put it for sale. And then we bought another house in an auction. Now, I didn't know anything about auctions. I just knew that this house was coming for sale. I bid for it, 7,500, and got it.
So no experience of auction?
No experience.
Wow.
And the guy had said to me, "Thank you very much, Neville, it's nice to see you, blah, 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 and £750, please." And I said, "Well, what's that for?" And he goes, "That's a deposit." And I go, "Well, okay." So anyway, the next day I paid the deposit, and we went to the bank, or Marilyn went to the bank for a loan, £7,000 for the loan, and she went into the bank and she said, I need to speak to the bank manager, and the bank manager said, "Yes, okay, come on, what's your account number?" She says, "I haven't got one." He says, "You come into the bank, you want £7,000, you haven't got an account number, you haven't got an account. Why did you come to this bank?" And she said, "Well, you're the nearest bank to where my father-in-law lives, and I got dropped off there this morning by my husband, and I've just walked down the road, and you're the first bank."
Oh, wow.
And he goes, she told the story, and she come out with a bank loan of £7,000.
Incredible.
What we didn't know, because I had to go in the next day and sign, what we didn't know, it wasn't a bank loan at all. It was a bridging loan.
Right.
I'd never heard of it,
Yeah.
didn't understand it. So 3 months later, the bank writes to us and says, "It's been 3 months now, and we give you the loan for 6. And go, "Did you? Really?" We didn't know this, and we're going to. You really need to think about doing something about it, because you've got 3 months left.
Yeah, like an exit strategy.
Before we take the 2 houses and we put them up for auction, and we take the money. Now, in the meantime, that 3 months that had gone by, I'd gone into the house, I'd ripped out all the electrics, all the plumbing, or the fireplaces, I'd ripped out the windows, I'd ripped out everything, because I thought I was a builder.
Yeah.
But
Did you have any building qualifications? No. Or no, just very handy.
I had worked part-time for a neighbour on painting and decorating. He'd shown me how to do it, which I'd had about 3 years doing that, which was a godsend to me. But I still worked for another company, and I'd ripped this place to pieces. And then we sold our house, what I was living in, and of course I couldn't move because I had to pay off that bridging loan and get a mortgage on this house, and I couldn't live in it, so I lived in a 10-foot caravan in 1973 in the garden, yeah, with a 3-year-old baby, and that was it. And then I got made redundant, and they didn't pay redundancy. Marilyn didn't get any benefits because you didn't get any benefits as a girl when you had a baby in those days. And
how old were you at this point?
I was 23.
Wow.
And so you go into a depression. You don't want to get out of bed. It was the winter. It was horrible, and it was dreadful. It was, and I went on the dole on benefits, and there is no benefits to the benefit system. There's no benefits for you because you just get down and down and down, worse and worse. Anyway.
So you're still trying to do up this house at the same time?
We haven't got any money to do it.
Yeah.
We've got no skills, no money, and we wanted to go into business. We desperately needed to go into business because I'd proved that I was incapable of holding a job down, because being dyslexic and ADHD, it was just odd to me the way people thought, and what they told you to do and how to do it. It was alien to me, and of course I couldn't do anything about it, because they'd say, we understand you've got skills, you can now be the like in charge of this little area, but then as soon as you had to write a form out, or you had to fill a form in, or you had to write a report out at the end of the day, it was impossible. I couldn't do it, but I knew somebody who could, and that was Marilyn. She didn't work with me, you see. So therefore we went through the yellow pages, what was like Google in those days, to see what everybody else did, A to Z, and there was 2 obstacles: no skills and no money. Then I saw somebody opposite, who lived opposite, they was having an extension done, and I said, look at all that glass being delivered, some idiot's got to clean that. And I thought, I know one. Yeah, what a crazy
Marilyn.
Yeah, well then we started.
Wow, so that was how how the business started.
Marilyn gave me a bucket, I borrowed my dad's ladder, I got my 37p piece of screw, went to the next door neighbour, knocked on the door, said
seen all this glass arriving, I'll clean it.
Yeah, and well, this was another next door neighbour. They hadn't got their extension up opposite us, but they'd seen us. I didn't realise this. They'd seen us in the back garden, living in this 10-foot caravan, heaps of rubble, heaps of wood and rubbish all over the place. Now, were they going to invite me in to clean the windows? No. She said, go away, and slammed the door in my face. That was the first potential customer. But luckily, down the street, somebody said yes.
Wow.
And that started. And then property maintenance started. And it was the book I've got here. The answer is yes. Now, what is a question?
Yeah.
All started off from that, by people saying, Neville, why are you cleaning my windows? Will you do this? Will you do that?
Yeah, and you just said absolutely yes to everything.
And one woman looked up the ladder and said, Neville, will you? And I said, yes, I will. And she said, I've not asked the question yet. I said, I'll do anything you want me to do, because we just wanted to eat. We was desperate.
Yeah.
We was. And
so how long were you living in your caravan for?
We was living in that for a year.
Wow.
Yeah. So
you're sitting there looking at this house out of your caravan window.
Yeah.
And then so obviously you're working.
Yes.
On the business and doing all the jobs that you can. So were you literally just working on the house as and when you could?
As and when we could buy some paint,
materials.
Materials. I found somebody who could fit some windows, so they come along and they fitted some windows for us, and then I found an electrician who would do the electrical work, and a plumber would do the plumbing work.
Yeah.
Gradually, as we went along, and we paid as we went along.
And how long did it take for that house to be finished?
It was about a year, because again, we was getting more confident in things.
Yeah.
And again, my dad could help, and then he had 4 volumes of books which I couldn't read, but there was carpentry and maintenance books, and every day I used to look at the pictures because it was in full detail of how to do the jobs, and I just used to pore over those books, and
so you took completely self-taught then?
yeah. I had somebody teach me painting and decorating.
Yeah.
And then the bits I picked up doing our own houses, I hadn't got the confidence to go out and go, I can do property maintenance. It was quite scary really, because I didn't have that confidence, but I learned that skill as we went on.
Yeah.
I got more confident. I knew more than I thought I knew.
Yeah. And so like literally just knocking on doors
Yeah.
and asking.
Yeah. And then it would get to a point, very, very quickly, it got to the point where people would just ask me to do work.
Yeah.
I would go and do it. Then I needed some help, and my next door neighbour then was a milkman. He's finished at 8 o'clock in the morning. He'd come and help me. My dad was helping me because he'd just retired. Marilyn's dad, he always wanted work because he was on money, because he was always on shift work, and he'd come and help me. Then I got other people. Within 3 years, we've got 6 people working with us.
And that was just purely word of mouth?
Word of mouth.
Sort of publicise the business?
No, word of mouth. And it was people who said, oh, you've had a nice job done, next door neighbour, and then they would have me to do that.
Yeah.
And we used to pray for the wind to blow, howl, gales. We used to pray for that, because we did a lot of roof work, putting tiles back on and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so
the odd storm was great for business.
Oh, it was absolutely brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. And so you take an opportunity, there's opportunities everywhere.
Yeah.
And my mum bought me, I made a ladder to go up on roofs of wood, but that was dangerous. And then my mum bought me a proper roof ladder, and we concentrated on roof work and the painting and decorating. And then painting and decorating, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
But I learned something, that ceilings. So I would paper somebody's ceilings, paper the cracks over, because there was a lot of cracked ceilings in those days, paper. So people would have me to paper a ceiling, and they'd go, don't worry about the walls because my husband will do that.
Oh, wow.
And by the time you'd done the ceiling, which only took a few hours, they'd go, wow, my husband's never going to do that. Can you do the walls as well? And then it would go from there.
Yeah.
So it was, and then one day I had to take a pelmet down to get the paper, because it was right next to the ceiling. So I took this pelmet down, where the curtains were, and I realised it was like a top piece of wood, 2 little sides and a front. It's so easy to make. I became a pelmet maker.
Wow.
There was another business there. So I used to go into people's houses, paint wallpaper, not wallpaper, ceiling, put the ceiling paper on, and go to them, do you not want a pelmet? Look, I'll show you one, I've got one in my car. And show them the pelmet, and they go, oh, that's nice, because I used to buy this wrinkly hardboard.
Yeah.
That looked really nice in those days. And I used to make a pelmet in the evening, go and fit it the next morning.
So you literally upsell then on everything that you did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you've just always been a natural business person.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah. So it was the need and the want that we wanted to improve ourselves.
Yeah.
We needed to improve ourselves because we'd have never made a living being a window cleaner.
Yeah.
Because window cleaners have rounds. We had a window cleaning business, because a round is like having 15 houses a day, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
You need 30 if you're going to do them every fortnight, and 45 if you're doing them every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And there's a ceiling.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this ceiling, I didn't want that ceiling. I wanted a ceiling that you could never attain. So it was like, okay, we do painting and decorating, but there's a ceiling on that.
Yeah.
Then we do building, but there's a ceiling on that. And then I realised that you've either got to be big in that property maintenance business, and some people are. And Marilyn was helping me. She was driving the truck. She was mixing.
Was she really?
She was mixing concrete.
Wow.
She was papering and painting and doing everything along with the lads. And so then it got to a point where we had enough work that she could have an office instead of doing it at night, doing the bookwork at night. And she said, well, I'll turn the office into a shop and sell second-hand prams. Now people was coming into us. We didn't have to go out to people.
Right.
People was coming into us. And I thought, what a great idea. You know, it's there's no rain, there's no heat, there's no bad weather, there's no, to stop you. People just come in, give you the money. Easy.
Yeah.
Where nothing's easy, as you know. So, but you go, if you knew everything, you wouldn't go into business.
No, absolutely.
You wouldn't go to any kind of business if you knew it thoroughly, because...
So was the shop the first property investment? So you didn't get into the residential side first?
Before that, I realised that working for people was fine. It was a cash flow, but in the long run, I'd seen people who was retiring in those days with nothing.
Yeah.
There was a painter and a decorator or a bricklayer, and the bricklayer would say, oh, I've been on this 40 years, I've got a bad back, my knees have gone, all that kind of stuff. And I realised that you're not going to retire with anything if you're in the building trade like that.
Yeah.
So you must leverage.
Yeah.
And you leverage your time, you leverage with having more people around you, you leverage everything. So we would buy a terrace house, which is derelict, and while we wasn't doing other people's work, we'd do our own.
Right.
So every few weeks we could buy and sell a house. Then it got to the point where there's a tipping point in everything.
Yeah.
And it was like, this is more profitable to have our own houses and renovate than actually go and do work for other people.
Yeah.
Because if you're painting somebody's house, they'd have 3 quotes, and you've got to be the cheapest.
Yeah.
But on your own house, you was making more profit. So after a couple of years after that, we decided that we'd only do our own work.
Wow.
So we was running the shop and buying and selling.
Yeah.
And then buying, renovating and selling.
And did yours finance those, Neville? Or because a lot of the questions that I get asked, particularly through the podcast shows, is how does somebody start off on that journey? So do they leverage it by finance, or did you buy your first house in cash and then...
Right, well, we bought the £600 house in cash.
Yeah.
Then we saved up, and as each week we spent £400 on renovating it, which took 2 years.
Yeah.
Then we sold that and got a bigger property. Then we renovated that and sold that and got a bigger property. That's the third one, with a mortgage.
Yeah.
Then we used part of that mortgage to buy another house.
Right, so that was always one that you lived in, yourself and Marilyn.
Yeah,
and then...
so you're leveraging your own house.
Yeah.
So you're working 2 jobs, you're leveraging your house, you're working on another house, and this is how you do it. Then you mortgage that house, you remortgage that house, but you don't need the money on that house. You put it into 2 houses, deposits on 2 houses. And that's how you do it. Then you renovate and sell, you make a profit, and you take the next house, you mortgage it. Yeah. And recently, when we left Kiddie Care 2011, we got quite a lot of money, but we then gradually borrowed 18 million extra to start up other companies and invest in other companies as well. And Marilyn said at Christmas, oh, I think we ought to get that down a couple of million. Now this is where your dyslexic and ADHD come in. I can't just do that. We got 18 million, and she's saying, well, we really just need to get down a couple of million because I don't feel comfortable. And by May, I'd got it down 16 million.
Wow.
Now that was finding stuff that we didn't want, property that we didn't want, wasn't bringing in an income that we didn't want, so we sold that off, and some investments that wasn't doing very well, and bits and pieces. So instead of getting it down 2 million, I got it down 16 million.
Wow.
You know, and it's like, but that's what you can do when you've had
when you've leveraged that much.
When you've leveraged. Now, when we leverage and got that 18 million, that's probably made another 18 million anyway. So probably, well, more obviously, because we could pay that 18 million back. You know.
So you were always purchasing property, doing it up, selling it on. Did you ever purchase property, keep it, rent it out?
After 12 years.
Wow, so you flipped properties for 12 years?
Oh yeah, we flipped it.
Made a lot of money.
So we went from renovating it ourselves to getting companies to renovate for us, and then we found that to flip a property, when the market starts to go up, and you take the opportunities, you take the trends, when the market is going up, what is the point of renovating them when you can flip them? And we're just doing a flip at the moment, and the market is not going up in every sector, but it is going up in some. And we're just done a flip, or we've just agreed to do a flip on something that we've got, which will bring us in £1.6 million.
Wow, just on one project?
Just on one project.
Because that's what I was going to sort of ask you really.
But we've upped the value of it.
Right. So it's quite a large property. So do you think the money's in the sort of larger, high-end?
There's no property on it. It's in land.
Wow.
So we've upped the value of the land.
Yeah, by getting planning permission.
Yes.
And will you flip that, or will you build it and sell it?
No, we're not going to.
You're still going to.
We're not going. We're not going. We're flipping it. Yeah. So
and do you think at the moment, with the market the way it is, and Brexit and things like that, do you think that it's a sort of purchase property and rent it out market, or do you think it is a purchase property, flip it market?
It is horses for courses, really. We built 600 houses in Heidi. That was a company that we owned, and we sold it last year. We kept 12 houses that we're renting out.
Yeah.
I like commercial property,
right.
And we put these in trust for our 4 grandchildren, but I'll still have to look after them. Well, we've got an agent actually, but they still come to me, and so I'm going to sell them anyway, because I'm not in that market now. If you're in that market and dedicated to it, that's fine, but my mind is on commercial.
Right.
So we're going to sell those.
Yeah.
We are, and just keep the money in trust and do something else, buy stocks and shares or whatever. Yeah. Or commercial property. So we're going to sell those.
So your advice is not necessarily the residential market anymore, do you think?
Yeah, it is. It was for us. It's done great for us. It's much easier in the way of risk than having commercial, because look what's happened to the high street. If I'd advised you 10 years ago to go into the high street because rents were booming, you know, and now you've been saying to me they're all empty, I'm paying the rates, I'm giving them away. So no, it's what you feel comfortable with, and we felt comfortable with buying terraced houses, doing them up, buying semi-detached, doing them up, buying detached, splitting off the garden, buying corner properties and just splitting off the garden, so you've got a free plot. All this kind of stuff, there's trends, and you not only trends, but you've got to do it as you are, what you're comfortable with. Now, I wouldn't recommend anybody. We've just built about £16 million worth of commercial, and I wouldn't recommend that to anybody, but we're in it. And we're in it to win it. So we are getting a phenomenal amount of rent. We're just getting the highest rents in Peterborough that's ever been recorded for new build offices. But they're worth it. Yeah,
and is that to sort of corporate high-end companies? Yeah,
it is. It just suits that type of person. It does. We're willing to pay for the view, looking over a lake, willing to pay for the technology that's in the building and everything. So So different things at different times for different people, and you've got to feel confident. I wouldn't have been building like 135,000 square foot or just to rent out to one person.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably too risky when you could have £8 million. Well, if you've got £8 million, you know, have it in so many, spread it around in so many different houses. So different times, different people.
It's the advice that I sort of give my clients myself, actually, because there is no right or wrong in property, is there?
No.
It's what you feel comfortable doing at that particular time.
Yeah.
And it's something that a lot of people come to me for, because I'm not in commercial like yourself, I'm in residential. And I sort of build bespoke property portfolios for clients. And they sort of say, you know, what do I buy? What areas do I buy? You know, and my advice is always just go with your gut feeling and do what you feel is right, because there might be a particular property where you think, oh, there's a great yield, or a particular thing for me is, where should I buy in the UK? And I personally think that it should be where you're comfortable buying. So you might get a particularly good yield in the north, but then if you're not anywhere near there and you can't look after that particular property, then what's the point in doing it? You know,
right.
So it's brilliant to hear someone so successful as yourself just sort of saying, look, you know, it's what you feel is right, and there is no right or wrong.
I like to see our properties within 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I think 20 minutes is the furthest I'd ever go, and there is. I'm laughing because.
Is that so you can drive around and see it? Or,
So,
and I'm the same.
So if there's a problem, if a tenant goes, I've got a problem, I can go and get in the car, and within 10 minutes, average, I'm there.
Yeah.
You don't get out of the habit of seeing the deal, being enthusiastic and making a mistake, because I do it all the time, and Marilyn goes, what do you want a property 2.5 hours away for? I go, because it's what you know. I love it, and then you go, I made a mistake here, because after the third time of going, wasting half a day or a day, you know, 2.5 hours away, you just wasted a day.
Yeah, and your time is precious, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I do use the time in listening to podcasts and recordings, you know, of motivational stuff, books. I've done that since 1980, so I'm not wasting my time in that time, but it is so aggravating when you get somewhere and a person doesn't turn up when they've said they're going to, or there's something wrong and you haven't got your tools with you, have to send a maintenance person, and this and this and this goes, and you are out of your comfort zone and things don't go right, and you make these mistakes, and I'm still making them, you know, and my heart still rules my head, and then you go, I shouldn't have done that. But
have you got any regrets, Neville, with anything that you've done in property, or do you see it all as, you know, you've gone for all these, you see them all as an experience?
How long have we got?
You know,
everything is a learning curve.
Yeah.
A learning thing. Yeah. Yeah, of course you do. You know, there's lots of times when we've actually gone from one area of business to another, and for the next 2 years you've lost money because you thought the grass was greener, and actually it was a knee-jerk reaction that you did something, and then you do regret it, but also you learn at the same time. And once you've done it, it's gone, and you have to get on with the new project. You have to get on with it, and you can't be regretting stuff. And when I say regretting, you've got to learn, and learn from that regret.
But it never stops you from doing
makes you
anything.
stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the biggest sort of I don't want to say mistake, but sort of thing that you've done in property where you thought, actually, I probably shouldn't have done that?
There was a big one. I had 50 houses in Peterborough. Rob Moore's probably got some of them. I think they bought some of them, not direct from me, but after I'd sold them. I sold them. I'd had them 7 years, and we was like one of the biggest we were the biggest private landlord in Peterborough at that time, and then the person who was looking after them in our office did all the day-to-day work because agents weren't a lot of good in those days. So we did it in-house, and then she left and it fell onto Marilyn. Marilyn said, "Oh, I've got enough work, you know, with the running of the shop and doing this, all the other stuff." And a knee-jerk reaction was, "Oh, I can do without this. I might as well sell the 50 properties, put all the money into a couple of commercials and have 2 tenants instead of 50.
Yeah.
Because in those days we would only rent a house if we'd live in it ourselves.
Yeah.
So
that's my mantra,
all be
actually.
new carpets and stuff like that, and redecorate. So we had a company that just had a decorating arm of their maintenance business for us. Used to come in every time somebody left, they'd decorate it, and it was great. So I decided to sell all those. We'd had them 7 years. There'd been a recession in the 80s or whatever, 89 there was a bad recession, and we'd bought all these properties. 7 years the properties hadn't gone up.
Wow.
And we sold them like a fire sale. I want to get rid of them. Oh, I need to get rid of them.
Did you sell them as a job lot, did you?
No,
Sold them as a portfolio,
no.
or
I just
sold
give them to an
individually?
agent. The agent said, "Oh, somebody wants 4, somebody wants 1, whatever." And I sold quite a few with people who wanted 3 and 4 or 5, something like that. So anyway, I went into commercial. Didn't really know a lot about it. Went into commercial. Thought I'll have 2 tenants instead of 50. Commercial started to go down, and the 50 properties that I had in 18 months doubled in price.
Wow.
So, and then with about 4 years, they doubled again. So I lost about, theoretically, £5 million on those houses, and the properties that I bought, commercial, also went down in value. So that was a big wake-up call for me to say, you know, I should have thought about it.
Yeah.
And I do. I am quite impulsive, and I will actually buy something or sell something quite impulsively.
Yeah.
Usually, you know, I'm right. I say you only got to be right 51% of the time.
Wow, absolutely.
You know?
And you haven't done too badly,
yeah,
have
you
you?
flick a coin and do I sell it? So, and gut feeling, you know,
Yeah.
your gut feeling. So that was a kind of a regret. It's obviously a regret because I wouldn't have remembered it.
Yeah.
I've got lots of regrets, I'm sure, that I don't remember because they were just stepping stones.
Yeah. What's the biggest win that you've ever had in property?
Biggest win. Wow. Made a lot of money on a property twice, actually. Same property.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's kind of lots of wins on the property. So I got £250,000 in cash. I saw this place for sale for £3 million, and I wanted it.
Yeah.
But I only got 250,000. So I went to the mortgage company and they said we can lend you 2 million on that. So I need another 750. So I remortgaged my house, which was quite a mansion at the time. I lived in it for 26 years, really beautiful. And it's 8,000 square foot indoor swimming pool, and it was really fantastic. So I remortgaged that for 750. So I got £1 million. Borrowed 2 million. So I got a £3 million property for 250,000.
Yeah.
I then let it out to a company that makes washing machines around here. Hotpoint, that's it, Hotpoint. And so they paid the mortgage, and I'd made £200,000 within 18 months.
What, on the value?
On the no,
Oh, on the rent.
On the rent. So it was a cheap rent actually, and I'd made £200,000 on the rent, and paid the mortgage, and paid the mortgage that I'd got on the house, and made money on the £250,000 I put in. So it was great. So then there was a fire not in my place, but there was a fire down the road in a place where Marks and Spencer's was storing their goods. So 2 days later, I got a phone call from an agent saying, you know that property that you've got this month-to-month lease on with Hotpoint, because they would never promise that next month they would have it, but they always did, but they never, and they would never go into a lease, which I wanted them to, but they said no. And I said, yeah, I've got that still on the same month-to-month lease, and they said, so we can get the tenant out. I go, yeah, there's no problem on that, because they don't want to be committed. And he said, well, my client will give you $4.5 million. Get the tenant out within the month, and they can have it within a month. So I said, yeah. So I made that 1.7 million in 18 months.
Wow.
Yeah, that was good. And then I bought it back, I think 3 or 4 years later, and then they'd spent £250,000 on doing it. And then I got, I bought that for about 2.75 million.
Wow, so you bought it for a lot less than they paid for it.
And then we rented it out for 420 odd thousand a year. And they improved it because they put down they put not millions, they put 250,000 into the roof, I think. So then we got an offer of 5.5 million. Well, it was the right time to sell. So yeah, we're doing all right on that.
Yeah. So you never wanted to live in that house yourself?
Oh, this wasn't a house. This was a commercial building.
Oh, commercial building.
Commercial building. Yeah. So it's 100,000 square foot on 6 acres of land.
Wow.
So, and it's like pretty derelict. So the people who bought it now put a contingency of £2 million on top of that, what they paid for it.
Yeah.
So they obviously know what they're doing.
Yeah. So what keeps you driven then with property? You know, because obviously you don't need to.
No.
You don't need to buy anymore.
No.
You don't need to do. You don't need to work.
No, design. So I like buying some land, designing a building or buildings, putting value on it, giving somebody a nice office to run their business in. They don't have to buy it because they haven't got millions and millions of pounds to buy it.
Yeah.
Well, some of them have, but they don't buy property, they rent, because it's that's the way they do things. They rent places. We just let one to a brand new place to Handelsbanken, isn't it? Yeah. So people like that.
Yeah.
They've got loads of money.
Yeah.
But
they don't want to buy their own.
No.
But also another thing is.
And so that's why I do it. Because it's giving people other opportunities.
Yeah. And how do you find the land? Because the land is something, again, people always sort of come to me for and say, how do you get hold of land? Where is this land? Is it just because you're quite well known for purchasing land, so people just sort of give you a call and say, Neville, I've got this, got this plot coming up, or is there a special, is there a secret that you can share with everybody as to how you get your hand on this land?
No, I can't share it unless you pay. I do mentoring.
Yeah. So there is a proper secret to getting hold of this land.
I would say there is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We get plenty of it.
Yeah. Because that is something very special, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but we've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
A long time, and
I don't blame you for not wanting to share. You can't share all your secrets, can you? Because that's what makes you so successful.
Well, it wouldn't be right because people have paid for it, and then they'd say, Neville, I just heard that podcast.
Yeah, you're giving all that away
I just paid you 20 grand.
Yeah. So what's next for Neville then, and his, your property empire, yourself and Marilyn? Because I know she's very active in her business.
We're giving a lot away, and so every minute of the day that we're doing things, it's a legacy really, because we're doing it for other people.
Yeah. Because
it's not for us, is it? It's like
you don't need. I suppose you don't need to be doing it anymore, do you?
No. Well, it's like I never have. People say about retirement. Okay. Or get this. Most days, why are you not retired? Well, I've been retired for a long time. What do you class retirement as? And they go, doing what I want to do when I want to do it. So in 1974, when I was on welfare, I changed from that to doing what I want to do when I want to do it, and that was property maintenance, because that's all I could do, you know. So I've been retired since 1974, 26th of September 1974.
Yeah.
I've been retired because I don't class it as work. So I've never worked, I mean, I worked 17 jobs before that, and never really enjoyed them, only one, but then unfortunately I left that, and so never really worked. And yesterday I was on the site and it was pouring down with rain yesterday. I needed to go out and put some steps on my Fitbit. I needed to if you're doing this all the time, you end up lethargic, you end up eating too much, drinking too much, and you need to get out. So I was just out in the rain all day, and it was like working with guys that I really thoroughly enjoyed, and they're so pleased I'm having today off. No,
you just
but
love
they
what
are.
you do,
I just
don't
rang
you?
them. Well, when you came in, I rang them. I said, "How's it going?" And because I said work inside, but no, they're not. They're sorting bricks out, sorting piles and piles of bricks out. What have come from all different sites, and they're working in the rain again. So they do like me working with them, and it was just
so it's just a passion then.
It's a passion, and we're giving it away because we're trying to secure it for the next generations, and that's where a lot of our work is that people don't see, and it's just it's great, really. What have what are you going to do in life?
I mean, you're very generous with your time, hence, obviously we reached out to you for me to interview you for my podcast show, and you were very generous and sort of said, yeah, absolutely. So,
the thing is it's a win-win situation, because my book, the answer is yes, no, what is the question? I'm plugging. And the reason I'm plugging it is not for me. I mean, it feels good. We're number 9 in America on
Business Life,
which
Business
is
Life.
amazing.
So but what it is all the money goes to Care International, and so that goes on to startups, and most of them survive and prosper. I think we've had about 20 in Angola that's gone down because of their currency, and haven't been able to make it. But there's thousands of people in poor countries that want to stay in their own country. They want to stay in their own community, and one way of doing it is to start a small business and grow that in their community. And this is what we help to do. So that's why I'm so passionate about, one, selling the book and putting the money into that. But the other thing I'm so passionate about is the book is it tells you what we've done, how we've done it, and it shows you what we think, our mindsets, and what you got to do to achieve these things. And people are going through what they feel is some dreadful times with their business, and it's and maybe there's a bit of it's not fair because why me? And in the book I'm talking about why you is because you've chose to look after yourself. You've chose to come put your head out over the parapet wall and do what you want to do when you want to do it, but it's hard. And the book is to say it's easy, really, because if you understand that this is going to happen, it changes from hard to easy, because this is the expected, not because everybody goes, oh, it's unexpected, I didn't realise this had happened or that happened or whatever goes on. No, expect it. and go through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is trying to encourage people to say, don't give up.
Yeah.
In 1,000 different ways. So that's why I wrote that book. It was therapy for me.
Yeah,
it
I
was
bet.
as well.
Just to share all your experiences.
Yeah.
And
I didn't want to go to my grave with, as somebody else said, with their songs left in them.
Yeah.
I wanted to share the majority of stuff with people to say, yeah, you can do it. You know, there's no.
And how can people get hold of your book?
Go on Amazon.
Is it on Amazon?
Yeah, goes on Amazon. Yeah.
And anyone who's listening, Neville, how can they sort of follow you on social media? Because you are a very wise man and you're very sharing with all of your.
Dawn, who's behind the camera, is my PA, and because I get it all twisted up, don't I?
You do.
Go on.
Neville.
So go on, Dawn.
We have LinkedIn.
Yeah.
We have a Twitter account at Neville Wright. We have a Facebook business page. We also have a private Facebook group. And Neville has his own website, www.nevillewright.com.
Brilliant. Thank you
That's
so much.
that's how you.
And
do it.
thanks, Neville, for coming on my show and explaining everything about what you do and give us some hints and tips. That's been really, really useful for everyone listening. And so thanks for listening and happy investing.
Thank you very much.